Jake Thompson had always considered himself a decent guy. Not flashy, not overly confident, but kind, loyal, and thoughtful. He had dated a few women in the past, but somehow, relationships never lasted beyond a few months. The pattern was always the same. Things would start strong, sparks would fly, but eventually the connection would fizzle. He didn't understand why. After his most recent breakup with Amanda, a woman he genuinely cared about, Jake sat down with his best friend, Marcus, who was married and always seemed to know what made women tick. "Man," Jake sighed, pushing aside his glass of iced tea. "I don't get it. I do everything right. I listen, I show up, I plan nice dates. But something's missing." Marcus leaned back in his chair, giving Jake a knowing look. "Jake, it's not what you say or even what you do for her all the time. It's about how you make her feel, especially with touch. Most men miss that. They don't understand how deeply connected women are to touch, emotionally and physically." Jake tilted his head. "You mean like hugs and stuff?" Marcus chuckled. "Yes, but more than that. There are places, moments, and techniques that speak directly to a woman's emotions. It's not about being aggressive or physical in the way some guys think. It's about presence, awareness, intention. And believe it or not, it starts way before the bedroom." That conversation was the beginning of a journey for Jake, one that changed how he understood intimacy, connection, and emotional closeness. He started researching, reading books, watching relationship experts online, and speaking to female friends in his life. Through this journey, Jake began to see a pattern. There were specific places where women loved to be touched, places most men overlooked. But more importantly, it was how they were touched that made the difference. Here's how Jake's world shifted, one discovery at a time. He met Emma in the fall. She was witty, artistic, and carried an air of confidence with just a hint of vulnerability. On their first date, Jake decided to try something new. Instead of reaching for her waist or trying to hold hands immediately, he paid attention to subtler forms of contact. When she laughed at his joke, he gently touched her forearm, maintaining eye contact just a second longer than usual. She didn't pull away. In fact, she smiled wider. Started with small things. One evening as they sat on a park bench watching ducks on the pond, Jake softly brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. The move wasn't calculated. It came from a place of affection. Emma turned to him and smiled in a way that warmed his chest. Jake learned that touching her hair, especially in moments of quiet connection, made her feel cared for. It wasn't about grooming her. It was a gesture that made her feel seen. That simple act, done gently and with respect, was more intimate than anything physical. Over time, Jake paid attention to how Emma responded when he touched different areas, like when he grazed her lower back with his hand as they crossed a street, guiding her gently. It wasn't possessive. It was protective. Made her feel safe. He also noticed how she would lean into him when he placed his palm on her upper back, right between her shoulder blades. That touch wasn't sexual, it was grounding. It made her feel supported. And on nights when she was stressed after work, Jake would sit beside her, pull her feet into his lap, and gently massage her arches and toes. She would melt into the couch, whispering, "You have no idea how good that feels." He was learning. The back of her neck, her hips, the insides of her wrists, even her knees. Every area held emotional cues. The touch wasn't always about stimulation. It was about communication. "I see you. I appreciate you. I'm here." But the real magic happened when Jake learned the value of touching her mind. During a lazy Sunday morning, they lay in bed together, and Jake reached over to trace his fingers along her forehead, gently brushing his knuckles down the side of her face. Emma opened her eyes slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "You always make me feel so loved, even when you don't say a word." That moment stayed with Jake. It confirmed what Marcus had said all along. Meaningful touch was an emotional language. One of connection, trust, affection, and desire. Most men miss this because they focus too much on what touch could lead to, not what it could mean. Jake noticed that when he focused on her comfort, her enjoyment, her responses, everything changed. For instance, when they were watching movies on the couch, his hand would rest lightly on her thigh. Not squeezing, not moving, just resting. And sometimes she would place her hand over his, squeezing it gently, silently saying, "I like this. I feel safe." One evening, after a long dinner with friends, Jake and Emma walked home. It was cold, and he placed his hand in the small space between her shoulder and neck, tucking her close to him as they walked. She stopped mid-step, looked at him with soft eyes, and kissed him without a word. That touch, unexpected, warm, protective, had spoken volumes. Eventually, Jake learned how to tune in. How to notice when Emma was closed off or when she was open to connection. He didn't take it personally. Instead, he used touch to reconnect. A hug from behind while she cooked. A light squeeze of her hand when she felt overwhelmed. His fingertips gliding along her arm while lying beside her in bed. These were not just physical gestures. They were emotional bridges. One rainy night, they sat near the fireplace, and Emma turned to him and said, "I've never felt so emotionally close to anyone. You don't just touch my body, you touch my heart. And I didn't even know that was possible." Jake held her face gently between his palms and said, "That's all I ever wanted." From that day forward, their relationship deepened in ways that neither of them had experienced before. Jake was no longer confused about why his previous relationships failed. He had learned to listen, not just with his ears but with his hands, his attention, his patience. He had learned that real touch was not about conquest, it was about connection. Emma and Jake eventually moved in together. Their relationship wasn't perfect. No relationship is, but it was real. Every argument was resolved with understanding, every high was celebrated with joy, and every low was softened by a reassuring touch. Jake had discovered something most men miss, that the most meaningful way to love a woman is not through grand gestures, but through the quiet language of intentional, respectful, and emotionally intelligent touch. And in that, he found not just love, but a home in her heart.